From what our members are telling us, it seems that the immediate risk of business continuity has reduced over time. Continuity plans have proved quite successful. The majority of workforces are able to work from home and everything's working as normal. I don't know if we can say that it's completely over, as I think there are still a couple more challenges which might come up over the course of the crisis. Next steps, I think, will be exploring contingency options. Obviously, we are all quite reliant on technology at the moment, and I think many firms are starting to think about planning a backup. Really, if technology does fail, what would the backup to that be? Another thing to consider as well is the return back to office and making sure that that fits with government and legal expectations across the globe. Many firms are in different jurisdictions, and there may be conflicting information coming out for each of those. Over the longer term, I think the biggest thing that was highlighted by this crisis was how business continuity plans maybe weren't sufficient for such an extreme crisis, and scenario planning maybe were extreme but not extreme enough to cover something like what's happening right now. So big changes, I think, will be in mindsets, really, where traditional scenario planning was quite siloed. I think firms are going to start to look at a more holistic approach to this and looking at end-to-end processes, and also ensuring that those scenarios are severe enough to be able to support in a situation like we're seeing now. The final thing I think that was highlighted by this was the complexity and potential exposures in terms of third-party supply chains. And I think there really now is a focus on supporting third parties to make sure that they are operating as they can, and to make sure that there is no knock-on effect with regards to that. In fact, we've heard from some members that they're actually proactively supporting their third parties. They're supplying things like laptops and making sure that internet connections are stable, just to make sure that they can continue working throughout the crisis. What we're seeing now really is a combination of factors which probably haven't been seen together before. So we've got things like remote working and a distance workforce. We've got adapted controls to make sure that that can be enabled and to make sure that operations continue. And so I think these combination of factors, what members really are telling us is that there is the potential for an increase in fraud across the course of the crisis. So if we take external fraud, I think because we've got these rapidly introduced controls and we mix it in with things like mandated measures and government-backed products, I think this has a potential to open up new exposures and different gaps which might be exploited in the longer term. And if we take internal fraud, again, because we have these adapted control environments, and I think the biggest factor is the reduced monitoring, then again we could be opening up to control gaps and new exposures. The final thing to mention really is cyber. There does seem to be an increase in attempts, but not necessarily successful attempts. So I think in a way that does indicate that cyber controls at the moment are operating normally, but that will remain to be seen over the course of the year. I think over the rest of this year is when we're really going to start to see these losses materialise. At the moment, members are telling us that there doesn't seem to be any new losses, but I think it will develop in time. So ORX has been working extensively with a group of members to develop some guidance on how to identify and how to report coronavirus-related losses. And over the course of the year, we'll start to collect some of this loss data. And based on that, what we will be able to do is analyse and start to explore the actual impacts of coronavirus. Equally, I would say that the changes in control environment aren't all a negative thing. I think many members are taking this opportunity to assess their control environments and to look at what is really working now in order to streamline and to improve efficiencies.